Hey, what's up? This is Phil from All That Remains, and you're watching Loudwire.
It is a weird dynamic there, kind of separating the two of something that you say on an album, or maybe a belief you convey on an album versus a belief that you convey, out of the studio, off record. Like, it seems like people get more pissed off about the stuff you say off the record.
Yeah, because I mean, you've only got, you're limited in what you can say in a song. I mean, unless you're writing, 15-minute songs, there's only so much you can fit into a song. But, and especially if you're talking about, ideas that are even marginally complex. You know what I mean? You can't get a big idea across in a song. You might be able to hint at it, and maybe start other people thinking about it, but you can't really express an opinion in a song, or it's tough to express an opinion in a song. So I think that what we do when it comes to lyrics and stuff like that is just like the tip of the iceberg of, and I would say that's probably the same thing with anyone else that writes. You know?
There's an interesting difference between the reaction from fans when it comes, or maybe not even fans, but people when it comes to people who are perceived to be right-wing. Let's say a guy like Ted Nugent. I think some people would perceive you to be right-wing.
They'd be wrong, but yeah. See, the thing is, like I'm a libertarian, which is it's a political persuasion, just like the others. But the thing, like when I'm talking about a subject where I agree with the right wing on, then I'm the right wing, blah 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 blah. But then when I'm talking to like my friends that are former cops or talking to military, and I'm like, yeah, the Defense Department needs to be cut, or yeah, the police don't need that. Then I'm the lefty. I'm the liberal. Wow. So I think that if I'm perceived as a right-wing person in the music community, it's because the music community is generally quite left.
I would agree.
So it's tough to go ahead and look at someone like me who has opinions on both sides, that agrees with both sides on certain issues, and then, it's tough to really be objective when your perspective is extremely left. Yeah. Or is extreme if your perspective is extremely right, and then I say gay people should be allowed to marry, then the Christians are like, oh, you liberal, oh, or drugs should be legal because the government shouldn't have anything to say about what you do with your own body, and the police, my cop friends and my conservative friends are like, oh no, you can't do that, So it really depends on your point of view, where you're coming from when you hear something, and that really affects the way that you're going to perceive it.
It almost sounds like kind of like a Ron Paul.
Yeah. I was a big Ron Paul supporter.
Okay. Makes sense.
I still am. I'm a big fan of Rand Paul. I mean, nobody's perfect, but I am a fan of Rand Paul. I mean, I like Penn Jillette's perspective.
I think he's great.
He's great.
He's amazing.
And he said before, I don't know enough to tell someone else how to run their lives, and I don't. I can't comment on how you should structure your life. We don't live together and hang out all the time. So then the question becomes, if you feel strongly about something and you believe that there should be a law passed, before you go ahead and start advocating for a law, think about, am I willing to ask someone else to do violence on my behalf because of this? Because enforcement of law is always violent. It's either coercion, intimidation, or it's violence. I mean, you break the smallest law, selling loose cigarettes on the street, and some dude with a gun is going to come up and say, you can't do this. Well, so if you really want higher taxes, are you willing to have someone kill someone on your behalf? If you want whatever policy that you're pushing for, is it important enough for you to ask someone else to go kill someone over it? Because that's what happens with laws.
Yeah.
When you have laws, there's always going to be people that break the law, no matter what the law is. So are you willing to go ahead and say, yes, that person should die for that?
That's interesting, because I read that you were in the Marines?
Marine Corps,
Marine Corps. So how does that thought go into fighting a war? Because
Well,
that's a huge, huge, huge.
Well, first of all, I was in the Marine Corps 20 years ago, so
Okay.
I haven't deployed, I haven't done anything. I never left the U.S. I mean, I was in for just about a year, and I got a medical discharge. So I'm not the guy to be like, oh, what's it like from a combat guy's perspective.
Okay.
My wife has deployed to Afghanistan once, to Iraq twice, and she's a libertarian too, and so her perspective is something that I've learned from. Like the dudes overseas, they're not really that worried about politics unless the policy is putting them into a shitty position. So like if you have bad policy, like if an administration has a bad policy, like right now I think that our policy in the Middle East is crap. The guys that are out there on the ground, if the policy's bad, you're going to get them killed. So that's when they say, look, that's when they'll say this is messed up. But when you're talking about, dudes that are getting into gunfights, not getting into gunfights thinking, I got to protect America. They're getting into a gunfight thinking, I got to protect my friend, the guy next to me. I got to protect,
Sure.
I got to protect, I got to protect my buddies. That's what it turns into, and that's where, the politics don't matter. When bullets start flying and you're on the receiving end or on the giving end, politics don't matter because it's all about get that guy, because if we don't get that guy's going to kill one of us.
Sure. Back to like the the right-left music thing. It's interesting because, like say a guy like Tom Morello's loved by people, then says I support Occupy. It's like people fuck you, and then there's
Occupy was the dumbest thing that's ever happened.
I remember your opinions on that, but then there's also the other side. People like Ted Nugent who I like to go hunting. Well, fuck you. And that stuff gets pushed onto you as well because of you were comparing civil rights to gay rights recently.
No, not civil rights to gay rights. The situation that Black Americans have gone through compared to the situation that the LGBT community has gone through. Everyone has the same civil rights, or they should be treated equally under the law. The history of slavery and the history of Jim Crow, and now currently we have, I think it's 6-to-1 Black or brown men in prison compared to white men. That is unquestionably, a problem in our country because black men aren't committing more crimes than white people. The laws are enforced more in Black communities and in poor communities, and so you end up with a racial outcome, which is something that Rand Paul has said and that I really like. You've got all these people in poor communities, and they feel like the cops are after them, and the reason they feel like it is because that's where crime happens. You're selling loose cigarettes on the street, and it's like,
and you die.
yeah, so it's like how could you not feel like the government's stacked against you?
Yeah.
So it wasn't about it's about the fact that Black people have had a raw deal, and there
Absolutely,
needs to be real changes. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't think that cops are like, let's go get us a Black guy.
No.
I don't think that at all. But I think that the legislation that gets passed tends to affect poor people more than anyone else. I mean, poor people that smoke, can they really afford $10 a pack of cigarettes here in New York? Why do you think Eric Garner was selling loose cigarettes? Because poor people can't afford to pay $10. So all the people that don't smoke, that say, I don't like smokers and I don't like the way it smells, so it's okay to raise the taxes on smoking, they're the ones that are responsible for Eric Garner's death. The ones that said tax them because it's not my problem. And you know what? Well, if I do smoke, I'm a rich guy, so I can afford the $10, so it's not a big deal. The people that get hurt are poor people. It's the truth.